Hello everyone, hope you are doing great today. Thank you all for joining our webinar today. I'm Dan from Localazy, and today we're going to look together and talk together about how you can use Localazy efficiently, taking into account your use case, whether you want to just quickly generate machine-generated translations and be done with it literally in a few minutes, or whether you would like to have a more automated workflow where you can automate tasks that make sense automating while staying in control of the translation quality and consistency. And we also look together at how we can handle duplicated content, which is something that can happen very often. And also we'll talk about uh, how you can streamline the localization, because at the end of the day, localization can be fun, it should be fun, and it definitely shouldn't be something that you feel bothered by or something that's throwing sticks underneath your feet. All right, so let me share my screen and we can begin. All right, so first of all, when you start, you're going to sign up. You can use the Google sign up method or sign up with GitHub, or as I'm going to do, you can just use the email password combination. Once you sign up, we will ask you for a few questions. In my case, I'm going to fill in that I'm a software developer, and my first goal in Localazy is to start with a fresh localization project. Let's give it a name. Let's call this Localazy demo. And at this point, you can decide how you're going to integrate with Localazy. Me, personally, when I'm trying a new tool, I don't really want to dive too deep into the documentation. I just want to quickly see what the tool can offer. And I presume it's going to be same for you with Localazy. And for that case, the manual upload is by far the quickest and best option. So let's upload our localization files. And these files, they can range from any file format, such as Excel to CSV or JSONs or YAMLs, or anything where your localization content is. Or if you don't have anything on you, you can also use this demo JSON, which you can drag and drop. It really helps you to quickly navigate into your application without worrying about whether you have some content on you or not. But I do something, so I'll upload one file, and the automatic detection should understand what type of file you're trying to upload. In my case, it correctly analyzed that I'm trying to upload a JavaScript-based file, but it can sometimes happen that this is wrong, so just double check this before you upload it. But as I said, most of the times this should be just fine. So let's upload it. And go start from there. So you can see a few interesting things immediately. One, I chose English as the source language. When creating the project, you can choose any language as the main language that you like. The main language should be the one in which all of your content is defined. English is the most common option. But one thing that you might consider, especially when you're setting up a production project for your team, to choose instead of English something what we like to call the developer English, which can be a great workflow in a sense that generally the developers are going to be the ones who are going to upload source keys, new content, and then you can just manage the developer English as the source language, and you can add production facing English as the target language. The advantage of that is that you can proofread the source content from the developer English, the initial values into English, without ever having to bother developers, to fix that in their code repository. So that's one workflow that could be interesting from the very beginning, but let's stick to English for now. And the second interesting thing that you may have noticed while uploading the content and also here is that we have something 195 of something of source keys. When I open the language detail, you'll see that I have some values. Those are my English values that I'm going to translate. Here's translations made easy, are you sure, cancel, and so on. And here are keys. These keys, for example, this app title is a unique identifier. That means that regardless of in which language this translations made easy value is, it's always going to be referenced by this unique value, and that is a source key. One way that can help you understand this concept is when you think of it in terms of a spreadsheet. Here again, you can see my 3 source keys. These unique identifiers are each on a different row. And this English value, the initial value, is assigned to this source key, but then each language mutation of this value is in different columns. So a source key is a language mutation of the given unique identifier, and the source keys are then the individual rows. In other words, it doesn't matter how many times you translate the initial value, the source language value. It only matters how many of those source keys you have. And a source key can be really anything. It can be a single character, a single word, a sentence, a paragraph even. But as long as it's identified by this unique identifier, it's going to be a source key. The easiest way how to know how many of them you have is to simply upload it to Localazy and we'll tell you immediately. By the way, I forgot to mention, please don't hesitate to use the chat to ask questions. We will go through this presentation first, but I'll then make sure to review all of your questions and we'll talk about some concepts that may interest you more or confuse you. So if you still are not entirely sure about what the source key is, don't hesitate to ask. Okay, so we've uploaded our source file. The next step is going to be to translate it into target languages. So let's add a few languages. Let's add German, Spanish, and for example, Japanese. And generally speaking, there are 3 ways how you can generate the translations. By far, the quickest way how to do that is through machine engines and to use machine translations. Dependent on the language pair, you can choose up to 4 engines. And if you provide your own OpenAI token, you can even use that. So in total, 5 engines are available. And it's hard to say which one is the best. For European languages, on average, I would say DeepL probably performs the best. But for Asian ones, it's not as convincing. So I think you probably need to try it on your own and test out which works the best for you and for your industry and for your tone of voice and so on. So let's just use Google for this case. And we'll then need to decide whether we first want to send the translations to review, meaning that it will be translated, but the real person will then need to go through each translation one by one and either approve it or reject it or approve it as is, or whether we want to skip it altogether. For this example, I'll just skip it to have some translations as quickly as possible. But generally speaking, I would advise against it in most of the cases. The reason is machine translations are performing better and better, but they are still not as good as real humans and real professional translators can do. You should evaluate how crucial it is that the translations are perfect. For example, if you are active in the healthcare industry or in the let's say financial industry, those kind of customers and users are very sensitive to translation quality, and they can be disencouraged if they see something doesn't really click translation wise. So there, I would always recommend that you can use machine translations to generate the initial values, but then I would let a real person review it. On the other hand, if your target audience isn't as sensitive, or you're trying to evaluate whether a new market would make sense, or you just have so much content that it's not financially viable to translate everything by real translators, then by all means, you can rely just on machine translations, and then it can make sense to skip the review process altogether. All right, so now you can see the translation, machine translation process has finished, and all of this is fully translated. And if I wanted to, I could now just export all of it. I can select all of it and export it. And if I wasn't talking so much, I would have been able to do this in a few minutes. In a few minutes, I would have been able to have my content fully translated. This can be really great if you have, like one-time translation process where you just need to quickly generate translations and be done with it. And this is also a nice way how to, for example, translate content that comes from various tools. For example, tools such as 𝗬spring or 𝗏𝗏𝐴360. Those are the kind of tools that are very hard to translate and localize on their own. And it's also very hard for other tools to extend their capabilities. So exporting the content from them, they have the feature to export all of their content and then upload it to here and translate it in a manual manner and upload it in a manual manner as I showed you, is probably the most reasonable way how to go about it. But generally speaking, there are better integration methods than just uploading all of your content manually. Why is that? Well, mainly because it's not automated. You can make mistakes when you do it by hand, and all in all, it just takes too much of your time, which you could use elsewhere. As I said, for example, for 𝗬spring and 𝗏𝗏𝐴360, the manual upload is probably the best way to go. All right, so we have our initial proof of concept. It worked, I would say, well. We've translated 200 source keys into 3 languages very quickly. But what about if I have much more content? Well, let's try it out. For now, let's stick to the manual upload. We'll look at another integration methods later. But for now, let's upload additional files manually. So I have a lot of files here. And you can see that this time we're uploading about, I think, 30 files. So let's see how Localazy handles that. This might take a little bit longer since it's, I believe, about 2,600 source keys in total. Yeah, 2,600 source keys. So now we have 2,800 source keys. Again, what we can notice immediately, we can notice that from fully translated languages, we now only have 6% of total translations final and ready. This 6% accounts for those 200 source keys that we had there previously. And it also shows that you can just upload new content, and I even included the previous file, and it didn't override my current translation progress. In other words, Localazy, regardless of the integration method, can recognize what has been updated, what maybe has been deleted, and what new content has been added. So you don't need to worry about that, and you can be sure that what doesn't need to be updated and what doesn't need to be translated again will stay in place. All right. I showed you the translation through using the machine translations. Another automated mechanism that you can use is the translation using your own translation memory. The translation memory is a storage of all the approved translations in either your project, or if you have some additional connected projects, other projects in Localazy, they can serve as the source as well. And by applying the translation through translation memory, you can reuse previously approved translations to translate duplicated content that is uploaded or that is newly uploaded. So let's just start this. And in all of that content that I uploaded, I will show you that I had a few duplicate values. For example, I know that cancel exists there multiple times, and this can happen very easily. Generally speaking, it's the best to handle duplicated content at source, meaning that if it's maintained by the developers, you try to talk with developers that they always use the same unique value and they don't make duplicates. But sometimes that's very hard to prevent, especially if the developers are not the one who are in control of that, but it's controlled by, let's say, a content management system, or it's a Figma file where you have various text nodes across multiple files. In those cases, it's really hard to keep in control, and sometimes it's even impossible. Let's see if this works or not. It doesn't. Wow. Okay, let's give it a few more moments, but you know how it is. When you have a presentation, some things are bound to go wrong. Maybe, unfortunately, this would be one of the things that goes wrong. But what should have happened, and hopefully it will happen, is that all these cancel values will reuse the previously approved translation, the 𝗵𝗂 that's here. So let's see if that happens or not. So that's another way how you can batch or automatically translate the content. And this is also a cool way how to handle duplicities, because again, if it worked, it's a very easy way how to remain consistent with your translations, because you're always going to translate the duplicated value in the same manner. Right. But okay, again, if this worked, it would translate a little bit of those translations, but not all of it. And then you need to think how you're going to translate the rest. If you recall, I said there are three ways how you can generate the translations. One of them being through these batch operations and machine translations. Another one is that you invite your own in-house translators, or you invite translation agency or whoever you cooperate with for a long time. And you can do so by navigating to the contributor section and inviting them via their email address. There is no limit on the number of users, regardless of the subscription that you use. So invite as many of your colleagues and translators as you like. And for each person, you can decide whether you want to invite them directly to your organization. And I haven't spoken about this that much, but your organization is basically your workspace where all of your projects exist. And when you invite a member to your organization, they will automatically have access to all your projects in the organization. On the contrary, if you invite them just to a specific project, they will only have the assigned role in the given project, and they will not even know about the other projects in your organization. So the rule of thumb is if the invited person is your colleague or somebody from your team, it probably makes more sense to invite them to the organization. If it's a translator or vendor or somebody that should have access only to this given project, invite them to the project only. And then you can give them one of the following roles. The translator is the most basic role, and they only provide translation suggestions that have to be then reviewed by the reviewer. The trusted translators' translations don't need the review, and their translations are immediately approved. The reviewer does the review of either machine translations or translations generated by translators, and they can also manage the glossary and screenshots, which I'll show you momentarily. The manager that can manage other members in the project, and the owner / developer can do everything in the project. Right. In the meantime, you can see that the translation through translation memory has started. So it probably just was an overload of tasks, and it took a little longer to process this time. But generally, this doesn't happen. Generally, this starts immediately. As you can see, in the meantime, it reused those previously approved translations, and now for all the duplicated content, it filled in the previously approved translation. All right. So yeah, that was how to invite members. And then the other important thing that you should do very early in the project stage is to define what we call the glossary, sometimes also known as the dictionary of terms. And this is a place where you can, browse through your content, think about phrases and terms that could confuse your translators, and you can explain them here what they mean, how they should be used, and potentially how they should be translated. So for example, CLI is a universally recognized abbreviation by all the developers, and it means command line interface. And this is something that you should not translate. So I will mark this as a untranslatable term, because I don't know any developer who would ever translate this. On the other hand, let's say that I would have a word such as marketplace. This is a term that could be understood differently, and it also could be also translated differently. So let's say marketplace in this context would be a place where you can purchase services, or a section where you can purchase services. And I would like this to be a translatable term. And then if I know how, I can even provide the recommended translation. So for example, into German, I could say that I would like this to be translated as Marktplatz, without making a typo there. So you should take your time. And think about the terms that could be confusing to translators before they even start the translation process, because that will help you improve the translation quality in the long term. However, this is not a one-time setup. When your translators come across additional terms, that you didn't think of initially, that could be confusing, you should go back here and define even more glossary terms. All right, and now how does it look like? So we have the glossary, and then when you encounter such a term, so for example, I had the marketplace. Do I not have it here? I don't. Okay. Sorry, I thought that I do have this term. So let's define a different one. Do I have CLI here? Yes, I do have CLI. So now I hope you can see it a little bit. The glossary term is highlighted in light yellowish color. And if you remember, CLI was a term that should be not translated. So if I try to provide some translation, but I won't include that word, there will be warning. And this should really make the translator think about the translation. Sometimes it can happen that the translator knows better than the glossary, and they still have the option to save it, even when there is this warning. But it should at least make them think about it twice before doing so. All right, and when we are here, we can talk about how the translation process looks like for the translators. So, as I said, most of the times a real person will either review the machine translations or they will come up with the translations on their own. So the translators will spend most of their time in this interface. They see which source key they are translating, which file it comes from, how much there is remaining, and what is the current translate value. And this is the place where they can fill in the translation. To help them with that, they can use the following contextual tabs that can help them improve the translation with the translation quality and consistency. Suggestions tab are suggestions that come mostly from external sources. You can see that we have 4 machine engine suggestions. But eventually, when your translation memory grows, you'll see more and more often suggestions from the translation memory as well. Also, we have something what we call the shared TM, shared translation memory. And these are approved translations from other projects in Localazy. Because, for example, something like cancel has been translated thousands and thousands of times already when I look it up. And we can suggest such translations from other projects in an anonymous way. And very often, these can be even better than the machine-generated translations. Here you can see an example that, from English into German, cancel has been translated like this more than 3,000 times already. And here is also an example of the translation memory, where you can see that it was translated like that. And this is actually also a good comparison of individual machine engines. And you can see that out of 4 options, it provides 3 different values. Right, going back to the translation session interface, the next tab is a tab where you can look up similar strings to the currently translated one, or if you know you're looking for something specifically, you can look it up here. And this can help you again with translation consistency, because you can look up terms that you recall you've translated in a specific way, but it doesn't exist yet in the glossary, so you can look it up through here. The versions tab is a tab which summarizes the full history of this source key. You can see if it was ever translated differently, if some versions have been, for example, rejected, and so on. In the languages, you see how it's translated in other languages. Then the screenshots, you can attach screenshots to multiple keys at the same time. Generally speaking, I would advise against trying to match all the source keys with a screenshot, because that's way too much management in my opinion. But there are certainly cases where providing a screenshot can help with the context much more than anything else you could do, especially for short phrases and short words, where screenshots can make wonder. And lastly, comment section. You can ask the project maintainers for additional context or how it's used, or you can point out a typo and so forth. So you should definitely be responsive to those comments when anyone comes up with any. So right, and at the end of the day, all of your target languages should ideally be fully translated, regardless of whether it was generated by machine engines or if it was generated by real humans. And once it's finished, again, you can then download all the translations back and use them wherever you need. Right. let me see. And this, by the way, and this concludes the first blog. And to sum it up, we've talked about how to manually upload your content, how you can quickly generate translations through machine engines and through translation memory, how the translation interface looks like, and how you can then export it manually. And we've also explained what the source keys are. All right. For the second section, let's create a new project. And this time we'll look at another integration method. We'll look at the integration of the Figma file or the Figma designs. Sticking, and let's create it with English as the main language again, and we will enable the shared translation memory that I spoke of. And we can also see one additional settings that I haven't touched upon previously. When creating a project, you can choose what kind of project it is going to be. By default, it's going to be either private or secret. And the private one is a type of project where, unless you're a member, you can't access it. You can't access the content. And that's similar to the secret one, but the difference is that secret project, you don't even know about its existence in Localazy. You can't even search it and find it unless you're a member. Whereas the private project, you can search for it, you can find that the project exists, but you cannot access the content unless you're a member. The public project is an interesting approach, and we have successful projects that rely on community-driven translations. In public project, anyone can join and anyone can start contributing without the need for you to approve their membership. And it can be a great option if you have a vivid community that wants to help you, and they want to contribute to the development of your application. And yeah, they can suggest translations. It's definitely a good idea to moderate it, because not all translations by the community is perfect, but they can suggest it, and you can have a list of dedicated reviewers, and they can review those translations suggested by the community. But since they know the project, it's very likely it's going to be better than what machine translations or maybe even professional translators without more knowledge about your project could generate. But generally speaking, the private project is by far the most common option. So let's do that. And then this is also a new screen. Now the project is asking you how you want to integrate. In the previous demo, we used the manual upload, but there are way more ways how you can integrate. For example, I had the JavaScript file, and I used the manual upload. But if the testing went well, and I would, as a developer, would be serious about the integration, I would definitely recommend that you use CLI, command line interface, as this integration option allows you to automate both the upload and download processes. And at the end of the configuration, if you do it just right, the ideal outcome is that the developers don't need to think about managing source keys and managing the integration with Localazy at all. They just create new source keys, and all the rest, both upload and download, happens automatically. So that's the ideal outcome. However, there are also different ways how you can integrate. And one of the ways how you can integrate is through the Figma. We have various plugins that you can use for various tools. Figma is one of the examples, but then we have also a plugin for example, 𝗬𝗏𝗏 CMS, Directus CMS, Storyblock, Zendesk, Intercom, and many others. And these are the best ways how to integrate with given tools. So for example, for Figma, to integrate with, you need to find the localization plugin in Figma's marketplace, and then you need to look it up in the Figma marketplace, and then run the localization plugin in there. So let's have a look at one of the design files that I have here. It's a fairly simple one, just a little bit of text, and it's a preview of a mobile application. And I would like to see how this looks, for example, in German, which is a language that usually has very long words. And I have a feeling that this could break if it's not in English, but it's in a different language. So let's try it out. So to run the plugin, open it under the plugin section and run the localization plugin by Localazy. And then it will ask you to connect. So let's connect to our Figma demo application that we just created. And now we are there. This is how the plugin looks like. The most two important sections are the one for uploading and downloading. You can then browse through these settings, but for the initial testing, you don't really need to adjust anything. I will just point out one interesting configuration, and that's the option to upload screenshots, which, if you decide to use Figma as the source of your content, which is referred to as source of truth, then it can be a nice benefit that the translators immediately see screenshots attached to those text notes that you upload, and they have the additional context without any additional effort. But let's just keep it as is, and then you can choose whether you want to upload just a single text note, or whether you want to upload a whole file or a single frame. In my case, let's just upload this frame, which consists of 26 text notes, and upload all of that to Localazy. And that, when happens, you'll see that we have our 26 text notes in here in form of source keys, and I can translate it immediately. So let's add German. As I said, we're going to use that as an example, and we're going to skip the review completely so that we can use those immediately. All right. And now when I download it, I'll select the file, I select the language, and voila, it's in German. And I can immediately see that this title, as I had feared, is too long in German, and I would probably need to adjust it as a designer to make sure that the final translation won't break. A few notes about this. One, there are basically two most common ways how you can use the Figma plugin. The one I'm currently showing you is meant to be integrated with some form of playground project in Localazy, which doesn't face the production, and only developers use to upload their content, have it translated by machine engines, and then download back. And it's a great way how to quickly test whether the layout and whether the design is going to handle those different languages, and it should increase their confidence in the design before they sign it off to the development team or to anyone else. Similarly, if you have a marketing team, for example, and they use Figma to generate marketing assets, using the Figma plugin for them can be ideal because they can quickly generate it, or they can even provide human translations, and they can download it back. The other very common workflow that many of our customers use is that you use the Figma as the source of truth, which means that you will come up with the content and copy directly in Figma, and you'll upload it. That's what's going to be translated by real translators and reviewed by real translators. And it's also going to be, those source keys are then going to be used by developers. This workflow is more complex, mainly because you need to upload it from Figma, and then you ideally need to somehow process it in Localazy so that it has readable source keys names, and the developers then need to use those source keys from Localazy rather than defining it themselves. So that is trickier, but the great advantage of this workflow is that what designers see in the design files is what developers are going to be using. And so designers can be sure that what they are iterating upon is what exists in production. And it just gives them even more confidence in their designs and updating existing designs. But for initial testing and before making the workflow too complex, I would say just using machine translations to quickly generate the translation here and previewing it in different language, even though the translation may not be final, is a great way how you can use the Figma plugin. All right. I can see that we have a lot of questions, which is great. Thank you for that. And let's see. Let's answer them before moving forward. So Martin asked, does it work to use single sign-on and have external translators being able to sign in as well? Yeah, I can see that Peter is trying to answer you. It's positive. Yeah. Yeah, as Peter says, for external translators that you invite just to a project directly and not to the whole organization, it's best if they use just their personal account and they don't use single sign-on, because this single sign-on is meant to be used in an organization. So unless you want them to become the members of your organization, inviting them as regular users and them using the sign-in with Google, GitHub, or through the email address is the best way to go, and I would probably say it's the only option as well. So just consider whether you can and want to invite them to our organization or not. OpenAI, what is there? How can you configure the OpenAI option? Marta asks. Yeah, so when I have the, for example, here there is a prompt to configure it, and when I click on it, it will take me currently to a different interface where you can enable it, and then it will ask you for the OpenAI token, and when you fill that in, you will have the option to enable it for just specific projects, or you can enable it for all of the projects. So that's how you can do it. So, but if it externals will be, yes. Okay, yes. Okay, I'd like to get it as well. Jenny asked, can we get a free trial to test the platform? Also, is there a limit to the number of owners or admins in the various plans? Great question. When you sign up, you automatically enable the trial for the business level subscription. I was originally meaning to talk about it later, but since you brought up the topic, we can talk about it right now. So again, when you signed up, you can see even here that I'm on a business subscription, and it's activated for 14 days. And the business subscription is the highest subscription available, apart from the enterprise one, which needs to be negotiated manually or on a case-to-case basis. So yes, in those 14 days, you have access to all the features that I'm talking about today, and you have access to 10,000 source keys across all your projects. And then is there a limit to the number of owners or admins in various plans? No. The number of projects, number of users, number of languages, and number of words isn't limited in any way. Even if you are on the lowest subscription, you can invite as many admins and owners as you like. Really, the limitations in place are two. One, the first and most important one is how many source keys you have. And the easiest way how to find out is that you upload your whole content and we'll tell you how many source keys you have. And once you have this number, it will immediately tell you which is the lowest subscription that you need to look at. And let's say that you would have 6,000 source keys, for example. That means you can activate the autopilot plan, but you need the 7,500 source keys variant. But you don't need to go for the business plan if you don't want to. However, if some of the features in the higher plan is interesting to you, for example, the single sign-on, then you need to upgrade to the higher plan, even though one of the lower options regarding source keys count would be sufficient. So I hope this answers your question. And since we've been at the topic of subscriptions, I hope the overview of subscriptions was clear as well. All right. I hope I haven't missed anyone's question. If so, please try to ask it again, and I'll make sure that I'll see it this time. Great. And thank you all for all these questions. These are great. Right. So this was the Figma example. One thing how we can take this one step further is by automating the machine translations on upload, so that you don't even need to go to Localizer. To do that, you can go to project settings and workflows. Again, this will take you to an external interface, but we are actively working on bringing this feature and also all the other features to the main application. But for the time being, it will take you here. And a workflow is in other words, an automation where you can automate certain tasks. So for example, let's automate empty translations. And then you can choose that you want to, as the action, you can choose that you want to translate through machine engines, but there are other actions that you can automate as well. For example, the translation through translation memory can be automated as well, and many more. Then you choose the engine, and you also choose the target languages. So for example, let's look up Spanish as the target language, and I'll specify that I want to skip the review process, meaning that they will be approved immediately. And this is just about when it should happen. These two basically guarantee that it's triggered every time you upload anything to Localizer. So save it, and now this is enabled. And if I delete my content and upload it again, it should automatically translate all of it into Spanish. So let's see. Let's add it first, because otherwise it will be added as a hidden language. But now when I upload it, yeah, let's put it back to English first. Sorry. Now when I upload it, let's see if it will work. You can see it was immediately translated into Spanish, and even without going and visiting Localizy, I would have been able to download it back and preview it in Spanish without ever leaving Figma. Which is pretty cool, and it's a great way how to test the Figma examples quickly. And also, it makes a lot of sense to use workflows for especially machine translations and translation memory translations automatically, so you don't always need to go to Localizy and trigger it manually as I did previously. All right. And for the last, and yeah, are there any questions? No, not yet, not now. And for the last example, I'll show you one more integration option. And for this, we'll use the Directus CMS, which is one of the content management systems for which we have built a plugin. And it's also one of the most popular content management systems out there. And the thing with content management systems is that it's very likely that you will have duplicated content. It's also impossible to prevent it because you have all your different tables, all your different collections, all your different fields and entries. And it will happen that you will have dozens and dozens of duplicated content over the long time. The translation memory is one way how you can handle it, but the disadvantage of that is that once you fill in the initial values, there is no connection between the duplicated source keys. Meaning that, let's say you translated that cancel, but then you change the translation once, it will not propagate the new translation to the other instances. There are two ways how you can do it more robustly. One of them is that you enable what we call clustering, which is here you can enable clustering, and as it says here, newly imported keys with duplicate values will be automatically nested under a single key in Localazy. That means when you upload that cancel 10 times, we are able to aggregate all of those instances into one source key in Localazy, which means you only need to translate it once, you only need to manage it once, it doesn't increase your source key count towards the limit. And it's a great option how to handle duplicities, especially when you have very little control over it. I should note that currently this works for API imports and API-based integrations, which means it works with Figma, with Directus, with 𝗏𝗏, and all of the tools that we have built. But it doesn't work with manual upload and CLI upload today. It might work in the future. It's a possibility, so make sure to keep subscribed to our newsletter, where we tell all about new features that we release. But for now, just bear this in mind. All right, and then this is a Directus CMS, and I have so it's similar content management systems to many others that you may have been using, and I have two collections here. One is my list of languages that I would like to support. Want to have support for, and then just articles, which is some articles with title, with excerpt, and then some content. And at the bottom is my something like an action label. You can imagine a button at the end of a blog page, for example, where you want to encourage the reader to continue browsing, and you could have a different label for each entry, but it defaults to learn more, so that there is always some label, some value. And you can imagine with more and more articles, it's very likely that I will have more and more duplicates like these. And this is the example that we'll use later. So specifically for Directus, to use the Localazy plugin, you need to go to Marketplace, you look up Localazy here, and it's one of the official integrations. You would install it, and then you also need to enable it in settings and enable it under the modules, which will then add a new section. And you can see that this is dedicated fully to translation to Localazy. First things first, we need to log into Localazy. So I'll log into our newly created project. We are logged in, we're connected to Directus, and then I can export all the content. I will make sure that I'm exporting everything from articles, and then I just can hit this export to Localazy. And in the project in Localazy, we should see that we have our content. And did I make a mistake? I think I made a mistake. Yeah, I made a mistake. I probably did not save I did not save the clustering. Sorry, one more time. Because didn't aggregate it into the special type key. So let's do it one more time. Now this is correct. You can see that I uploaded 7 source keys, but I have 2 articles with 4 fields in total. So this already indicates that something happened. And when I open the main language and filter for the special type of source key, the cluster source key, you can see that it exists and it has that duplicated value. So it's a single source key in Localize. It doesn't exist more than once, even though it exists twice in Directus. And when I open the details of that, you can see that it indeed contains 2 instances of that source key, but it's aggregated into one, which means I only need to translate it once, and I only need to manage it once. So let's quickly translate it into Spanish through the machine engines. We can use, I don't know, DeepL this time. We'll skip the review again to simulate the work of real translators, ideally. And fully translate it, so we can go back now and we can import it back to Directus. And hopefully we'll have the translation here. Yes. And you can see that all of a sudden we have the Spanish translation for all the articles that we have here. And you can also see that the learn more has been correctly put into right places in Directus, even though it exists as a single key in Localizer. Last thing, this is again a way how you can generate the translations. It works even with the cluster type strings. But if you recall, I talked about 3 ways how you can generate the translations. And to summarize, it was through machine engines and overall through automated translations, manually by the contributors, or you can also order the translations directly from us if you don't have your own vendor. Great thing about it is that you can combine it. So that means you can order the translations from us for, let's say, I don't know, Dutch, but you would have your own translators for German, and you would use machine translations for any other language. So you can combine all of those. And for each service that we provide, you can choose from one of the 2 translation options, let's say. One is professional translation quality, which means the translations are done by real professionals, natives or professionals in a given language, which guarantees the best translation quality. Or you can use something what we call human-assisted machine translations, which means that a real person will evaluate the translations generated by by machine engines, and they will check whether they use the glossary terms, whether they used correct punctuation marks at the end or at the start, whether they use the correct casing, if the machine engines didn't translate placeholders, which is basically always incorrect, and so forth. So human-assisted machine translations means they will verify the translations from the syntactical point of view, but they don't improve the translation quality. The translation quality and accuracy is the same as the engine was capable of itself. And so this is how you can generate it. And as I said, you can set it up differently for different languages. And what is nice about it is that once you add enough credits to your account, the translations will start automatically, and we will continuously deduct credits from your account based on how much work was done. But it will happen automatically, continuously, which means that you don't need to always log in to place another order saying there are 100 more translations or so, as long as you have enough credits on your account and there is a service active and there is something new to translate, the translators will pick it up as soon as possible. Generally, in a few days, even one day, sometimes even a few hours. It really depends on the amount of content that you have and whether this is a fresh translation or whether it's a repeated translation and the translators are already familiar with your project. All right. This sums up all that I have prepared. There is definitely more that we could talk about, but I do hope that I've showed you something new and something insightful and something that can help you set up Localazy in a way that will be efficient for you and that will help you, generate the translations over which you have a lot of control while being able to automate tasks that you may have been doing manually previously and which make a lot of sense to automate. Thank you very much for your attention. I apologize, it's a little bit longer than 1 hour, but I really wanted to show you as much as possible so you can find something that interests you. One more thing from me, you don't hesitate to reach out to us directly via the email, or if you have some quick questions directly in the application itself, you can click on this question mark icon and contact support, and we can help you directly from there as well. So thank you very much. Have a great day, have a great night, and hopefully I'll see some of you around in Localazy. Bye bye.